Here is an interesting piece, 16th century Dutch, and I'll be working on it as the interior is covered with a layer of dust, which is freezing the mechanism up, not allowing it to run for more than a few minutes. The hands are incredibly tight, so I will be taking the face off, which is supported by 2 vertical screws on the top, latches in on the bottom. And I will also be adjusting the tick, adjusting the timing, which on this type of clock requires bending a little bit of metal at the top of the pendulum. This is a very particular type of clock mechanism in that one weight drives both the mechanism and the chime mechanism. As you can see, it goes up in a double chain up at the top, which then connects down here. This is where you pull to wind it up. The difficulty with this was it was bound up at the top, and that was preventing it from running at all. And now, utilizing a glove that Michael Jackson would die for, let's look over this mechanism, which I have just blown out. And I will oil each and every joint of these wheels. Then I will put the hand back on and start spinning it by hand gently. And hopefully the mechanism will get loose enough to where the pendulum will keep going on its own. As you can see, I've set the mechanism ticking. If you want to balance a clock, never do it visually, never do it with the level. Listen for an even tick. Listen. And that was a slightly odd tick. I may have a broken tooth on that wheel. We shall see. Suffice it to say, I was unfortunately right. You can see the shorter tooth in the center of the image as I zoom in. And that causes the clock to tick unevenly when it passes that tooth on one side of the rocker mechanism, and again when it passes onto the left side of the rocker mechanism. So since we don't have a store called 500-year-old Dutch clock parts R Us to replace that wheel, the option is to get it lubricated enough to where it will tick past that and keep running. And here we see the point at which the clock stops. Right over the short tooth. It's where it stops motionless because the rocker diving into that twice instead of once causes it to lose enough momentum to where it cannot continue the ticking past 15 minutes. That will require machining to lengthen that tooth. Unless I can drop the pendulum far enough where it would actually make it past that spot and just keep ticking.
Mm-hmm. Ceiling is higher when it's painted that color. So okay, I did the girls' rooms with that.
And over here,
on top.
we'll hear that bad again.
Yeah, I did our room too with the blue. It was real light blue, but it did give a tall ceiling impression.
Okay, now we can talk. This is just a recap of this video installment. Wanted to point out the small round dial in the center of the face, in the center of the hands on that clock. That is actually a very old alarm clock mechanism. You would set a pointer to a certain hour, and then a small chime at the top would start ringing just like an alarm clock. We left that off. We just let the weight go all the way and left that not working. The other thing that was found with this clock is, if you look at the last part of the video, the wood was put back on the bottom, covering the pendulum. There was a piece of wood glued and nailed to the rear of that board in order to hold it together, because the wood is so old, it's very delicate. That was propping the bottom of the clock at an angle away from the wall. And when that happened, the people who owned it tried to start the clock, said the pendulum was scraping. They could hear scraping. So I removed that extra piece of wood. The clock hangs straight on the wall, and the pendulum, of course, swings very nicely. So it is the next morning. The clock is still ticking. We did have success. I thought I would finish up by recapping and telling you these last couple of details. And until we meet again with the next clock project, just remember, time will tell.